back to post another video based primarily on the feeling I have of being uninterested in posting anymore on YouTube. I totally lost interest in YouTube. And I think to myself, well, if I have this lack of interest in posting, I better post. and you know, my sensibilities are basically contrarian. So even if I feel something within myself, I I oppose myself. It's the way I'm built. It's like if I think one way, I say to myself, well, what about thinking another way? So if I'm not interested in making a post because due back to the lack of interest in my channel and unpopular demand, here I am. I'm going to post in front of my iconic images. I dug up this painting. I pulled it out. It was actually badly stored, so I have to revive it. And it's iconic characters, I guess. Iconic characters. Howdy Doody and Pinocchio. So let's see where I am here in the picture. Here I am in the picture. I'm going to just sort of ramble on a bit like I usually do with my archetypal image of myself, like the guys behind me. And this is Fukushima, the destroyer of worlds. This is not in any kind of way a joke like the guys behind me, the entertainers. This one is not an entertainer. Of all the icons that I associate myself with, this is not entertainment. This is hardcore brutality, suffering, which is kind of like a standard whereby I judge reality, that suffering in the sense that it's not fun. It's not fun. So yeah, I'm gonna address fakers and lying and which have a high level of entertainment attached to it. Lies and fakeries, things that are not real, have a great deal of entertainment value. This is a conclusion I've come to recently. And okay, first of all, why am I posting? I'm posting because I don't want to post. That's basically, I'm going to make a video because I don't feel like making a video. And I think that this is probably a sentiment in quite a number of people. And I think there's a dogged element that when somebody is following their what I call an inner direction, a calling, what I call a calling. This is something that supersedes any kind of feelings that we might have individually. If we feel a certain way, there is like a fundamental nature to us that makes us want to do something, even though it's contrary to sensibilities that we might have. And I'm quite associated with anyone that is contrarian, because if we look at compliance is something that tends to get us. Compliance gets us into a very nasty circumstance, generally speaking, because whenever we see compliance happening around us or conformity, we tend to end up in unpleasant circumstances, although it is promoted and proclaimed, if you go along, you get along, it's going to be good for you in the long run. Well, I disagree. I basically disagree. So I'm just going to ramble a bit here on ruminations, thoughts I've had since I haven't posted for a couple of weeks. My last one with Marlon Brando saying there is no such thing as culture. The few people that have looked at it will understand why I posted that, because I have this innate sense within myself that whatever it is that is promoted, that we are that we are encouraged to be a part of has never really worked on our behalf, on my behalf. I very rarely, I think there are pockets in what we understand to be culture, but somebody like Brando, it's sort of like the pot calling the kettle black, you know, the guy who he turned into the Michelin Man. Uh, his despair, even in that little clip that I showed, I think I attached a link to it. There's a deep, profound level of despair when a person descends into that kind of behavior, that becoming like 200 pounds overweight. There's a problem there. I mean, you can't just sort of look at that and say, well, no, it's just a person, and he said, no, I can lose it if I want, but why do you have it in the first place? You see, there's a connection. The physical world represents something that is of the inner world. I always say this. And in the case of Brando, someone who had succeeded in the external world, the world out there, he had very little regard for the world that allowed him to succeed. That's kind of interesting too. I think people, this comes back to what I talk about conscience, that even a person like Brando functions on some level with a conscience. Not in his 90% of his life, he discards it, but then it creates a dysfunction within him, and he becomes like the Jabba the Hutt. And he still has some valuable insights. Obviously, these people are not stupid, but they comply with a system that basically is dysfunctional, and they become dysfunctional themselves. I think this is very important to understand. So the idea, you know, we pay attention to YouTube quite a bit of the time. Don't fool yourself. You're being entertained. All the stuff that is contrarian is actually, in many ways, part of the entertainment. I'm not interested. Well, I shouldn't say that. I do feel entertained as well. It's kind of like a background noise to something going on within me that is being displaced during the time that I listen. So if you listen to people that talk about financial crisis or the reality we live in, like the blue pill reality of a ball Earth and space and moon and planets, science as being basically the consensual science that surrounds us everywhere, that doesn't give us a moment, not a moment. I must say, I appreciate channels like Jeranism, or even the NASA channel guy, Matt, who says he's an artist. He makes paintings. He's devised ways of painting floors that is so brilliant. It might be true. It might be true. And these are contrarians that provide something to me, primarily on an entertainment level. There are feelings and intuitions that I have that create attractions. I feel attracted to certain people, people that talk about certain things. Quite often, they have to do with exposing those things that are fundamentally creating suffering within me or within other people. Like from even a minute level of suffering, meaning that you're having pangs of conscience. Like people walk around and they do all the wrong things all the time and just feel anxious, and then they get fat or they get thin, or like things happen in the real world that reflects our inner world. And if our inner world is not in balance, suppose I could go into what it means for me to be in balance. I've done this all the time. I mean, I talk about the balance, which is why I use my paintings. I make paintings in order to establish this inner balance within me. I highly recommend this, people, that you personally find ways that create balance, whether it's an exercise program or an eating thing that you do, or in relationships that you have certain criteria that motivate you to relate to people on a constant basis, that balances, that make things feel right. You want to feel right. I want to feel right. And most of the things that we're exposed to make us feel not right. There's something wrong always. And I hear it. It's called the Trump mantra of fake. He's really trumped that one, hasn't he? He's really put that to the fore to set it aside, because my fake is the fake I want you to be fake by, like that sort of thing, right? So the word fake is rather quite ingenious. And the liars, the liars, and well, there's much more to it when you're looking at Pinocchio, Howdy Doody. I mean, these are very disturbing characters in mythology and even contemporary mythology, how they manifest themselves. You know, you have like the Trump. The Trump is a combination of these two put together, or our own prime minister. He's like, you know, they could easily be associated to these kind of archetypes. But here's the thing. The thing that that I decided, because I didn't really want to make a video or a post or say anything about anything anymore, really, because this rules the roost now. People, Fukushima, the plant, the nuclear plant that blew up on March 11th, 2011. This really rules our reality. Ultimately, it rules our reality. We don't feel it necessarily, but it rules our reality, because what really makes us aware of what is real is suffering. And suffering doesn't always lead to a resolution of balance, because if suffering and pain and agony, if all that contributed to our intelligence or wisdom or heart, we would be brilliant. We would all be geniuses, because if suffering was actually the standard whereby we learn, we should really necessarily be brilliant, because this is something that comes out. A lot of people feel very upset about the fact that, you know, they want to kiss off on this experience because it's so difficult. And difficult not just physically, but psychic, emotional, spiritually difficult. People have a great deal of difficulty. I spoke with somebody, a friend yesterday, and they withdrew. They disappeared for a week. I checked him out, and he just sort of disappeared, closed the door, laid down on his bed, and was depressed. That's very disturbing to me. I do my best to encourage people to have some kind of, I guess it's a level of hope, and hope in the best sense of the word, not like hopeism. You attach yourself to some fictitious notion and you create, I don't know, what is that, you know, what is it that truly makes you get up in the morning? Well, I suppose if you have things going on in your mind that motivate you, even if they're not, you know, if I judge them to be mistaken, but if they motivate you, go ahead, do it. I mean, the point is, we breathe, we live. We breathe, we live. And after that, everything is either real or just entertainment. Real or entertainment. To the point where even suffering is just entertainment, to divert us from the real. That's what I'm thinking about. The channels you may frequent that attract your interest indicate a personality as well, the kind of person that you would be. So if you're listening to someone that is contributing to your inner well-being, and when I say the inner well-being, it's not a frivolous reflection on my part, because this inner part, what is considered to be just it's just something that's added on to our experience, is in fact the most important aspect of our existence while we're here in this dimension, in this format. That inner part is the thing, is the play, as Shakespeare might say. The world's a stage outside of all the work that we do within. It appears to me that Shakespeare understood this. This is from As You Like It, Act 2, I think. Whoever the character was, Jacob or somebody. Anyway, my point is that I'm attracted to different people, and for me it's important to see, when I reflect on what is being transmitted to me, that in fact it's more than just entertainment. And even if you say to yourself that this is so important, the financial collapse, the Fukushima disaster, It's very important to understand what part of it is just an entertainment value or what really makes me feel balanced of having understood something. And it could be very disturbing. Obviously, it could be very disturbing. I think it's not just because you know something, you're not wise. Wisdom is a process that happens within. Just because you can regurgitate mantras from the past that somebody else has given you, just attempt to stipulate something of complete and total originality on your own. And it's much easier than you think. You don't have to be a Picasso or a Rembrandt or a Vermeer or the people you admire that seem to be so incredibly gifted and powerful. Originality is rare. I've said this often, is very rare, but it's one of the most fundamental aspects of what makes us us. And originality in the sense that we do something that is so crucial to our existence in terms of balancing our energies, our understanding, our psyche, our spirit, our relationship to what I call eternity. I've said often, I have a romance with eternity. This is crucial. What is it that is going to create the connection that I want to have with eternity? And there are some fundamentals from what I have understood in my short term here, what I've understood, there are some fundamentals that make me very original. And not even in terms of the paintings, just in terms of my connection to that inner self, which is so utterly unique. I mean, this is exhibited all over the place. If you look at what the expressions that people provide us with, adding to the richness, like the Borg, adding to our perfection, everybody is presenting once a person connects with this inner self, they're entirely original. And it may not appear that way. It may not always appear that way. We say, well, I've seen that many times. Well, the point is, it's not you having seen anything many times. It's the point, like the child who's actually capable of tying their shoelaces. This is extremely important to them. This is highly original to be able to do that. And you look at it as a parent, you say, oh yeah, okay, yeah, you tied your shoelace. It's magnificent. These epiphanies need to be recognized. We need to acknowledge this in the real world when a person shows their originality, expresses themselves in some kind of synthesis of understanding that becomes wisdom, and it has to be encouraged, which culture doesn't encourage. The culture that I grew up in, that I see around me, discourages originality. It encourages conformity, which is why from an artistic point of view, if you go to a museum, everything looks the same. You see all the art that's up on the wall, and it's not just because, oh yeah, it's a movement, it's a period. No, with all the people on this planet, so many billions, however many there are, it should be incredibly different, but it's not. It ends up being totally predictable. It is so predictable. And I find myself in opposition to all of that because it's so predictable. Predictability goes along with conformity and compliance. So what am I saying? I'm talking about this. I'm talking about this because I didn't want to post. So I'll pick on the usual suspects, which is myself, which is an understanding that I have of myself, why I do what I do, why I'm exposing myself. And what's interesting to me actually is ever since the attack dogs have withdrawn, some of them obviously were just computer bots of some kind. I think this happens. We're being manipulated and controlled. The fakeries, the lies, the attacks, all those things that happen, slowly, bit by bit, I think I'm putting it together for myself. And as I'm able to do that, the attack dogs leave. As I become more effective in my own life. The attack dogs leave. So when I was, this is ironic. This is peculiar. I'm just putting this out. I'm not sure if it's true or not. But when I was in association with Blanche, and I was meeting up with people that are anti-nuclear, and there was a lot of attention, relatively speaking, paid to what I was saying, which is actually, yeah, it felt badly for me, but in a certain way, I was complying in a system because I hadn't really understood the meaning of this in my own life. So as I proceeded through this experience, this is my analysis of myself, that I changed in some way, and the attack dogs found me of very little interest. Does that mean that anything that I may have to contribute is of less significance? And I say no, it's not. Which is sort of like the idea, if you have hundreds of thousands of subscribers or hundreds of thousands of views, generally speaking, this is entertainment then. That is my conclusion, because in my own experience of this YouTube thing, that, and I've never been part of this sort of larger interest, like 5,000 views or 10,000 and 50,000 subscribers, all this kind of stuff. Channels that I still listen to. Like, somebody I really like is the amazing Polly lady. She's lovely. She's lovely. She digs into stuff. She's beautiful to look at, and she presents us with all the facts and stuff. But I have to say that it's part of this ambient sense that I have of just being entertained, because it's not really affecting the person I am. And it may very well be that there are very few things that can truly affect us. Like if you have a family and you have children and you're interacting with your family, that will truly affect you if we're open, or relationships we have, they will truly affect you. What comes off a screen, like I say, is primarily entertainment. It's not going to have a big impact. I challenge anyone to argue this. If you personally feel you have been completely, totally changed in some way by what came off a screen, or reading a book, or watching a film, or seeing a painting, it can happen, but it's very, very rare. It's very rare. That's what I'm saying. If I was to project myself through this medium in a way that could make a difference, in a way that would make someone feel that I'm talking to them, it's because I'm able to communicate a level of personal understanding, like something that I have true. I'm trying to find the right words. They're all sort of empty. That when we understand something about ourselves, which is, again, it's why I make paintings, because blah, 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 blah is just blah, blah, blah. And a painting is a little bit more accurate about transmitting this feeling that I might have, and interpret it through colors and lines and images and stories. But if there's anything, which is why I do it from the studio. I mean, that's why I'm not walking around on the planet in different places, and I'm doing it from the studio, which is where anything that is of significance in terms of what I can communicate through this medium makes sense to someone, would make sense to someone. Something that is real. And what's real is that things have happened to me that I've understood, and I'm able to communicate that as best I can with my words, but primarily with the paintings. So the value of this medium which I'm more and more discarding for myself. Like I said, I'm not feeling very motivated, but that may be part of the ambience of things that are going on around me, within me, about discouraging me. So if I feel that, no, I'm going to continue to do it because I feel disinterested. Sometimes, you know, when you're disinterested, you just quit it, you stop, you do something else. But this is too important. I think this is too important. What it is that we share, this experience that we share, there are certain things that are very important. And one of them is the well-being of what is understood to be life generally, what is understood to be what we experience as life, breathing, being who we are, this bag of blood, as I call it, in some kind of a context in relation to something much larger than what I feel to be just myself, larger. This is important, people. What can I say? This is why today I decided to make the video, to keep that inner motivation, that balancing thing that is going on. Our body is continuously balancing itself. The metabolism, the I guess the mechanics of it. I don't like mechanics of it. The eternal interactions that create the beings that are just everything and everywhere. This is like a complex reality that needs to be reinforced for people, for you and me. People need to reinforce the best part of this in the way they've decided to do it. And even people that make mistakes, I appreciate people that make mistakes and over a period of time begin to adjust and change their presentations or the way I perceive them to be changing. And frankly, most people don't change. They have a format and they don't change. And it's basically you're going back for entertainment to see that, to confirm what it is you want to hear. You go to the channels that confirm what you want to hear. Like the few people that listen to me, you are actually feeling and experiencing something in the same way. And this is a good thing. But don't come to me because you just want to hear what you think I'm going to say. I may disappoint you, which is something I look forward to. I want to disappoint you. I don't want you to agree and think the same way as I do. But I understand that connection we have to each other. Beyond the idea of arguing with each other, there are things that we have in common that need to be communicated. And that's why I think today I decided to continue to reinforce that which is the best of myself, to communicate that and to say, don't lose hope. As I said to my friend yesterday, that he was all upset about the financial misdeeds. He's a banker who has withdrawn from the system and is living like a virtual hermit. Not exactly a hermit, but his external existence is quite tumultuous. Like his environment is quite difficult. I find I couldn't be that way. I need a sense of order around me for me to be able to function and discover that which is within and all that. I don't need a confusing external world in that way. But I encouraged him. I tried to communicate, number one, in my way, that he is loved. Whatever his flaws or follies or things that we need to communicate people, to bring them into our circumference, to bring them in. It's let them know that they're loved in some form or other. You don't have to kiss and hug, but there are ways of doing that. And I've sort of understood this more in the last few years. I've begun to understand how to communicate this sense, this feeling. To communicate this feeling that there is appreciation and love for another person, even if they're flawed, even if they make mistakes, all that kind of stuff, right? So anyway, this basically was, I was motivated today because I was listening to Jeranism again on the ball flat earth idea. And there's no such thing as a body out there called scientists or organizations that present to you anything of value. This is what I get from Jeranism. What he is opposing is the notion that someone in authority will let you know what is real and what is not. We understand for ourselves what is real. We don't need these external sources to confirm something we already know. They're entertainment. NASA is entertainment. Governments are entertainment. They create suffering in all different ways, which is where I begin to, my sniffer comes out when I sense this, that the dysfunction creating suffering is actually like this little anecdote about the saint that was being burnt alive on the stake. He was lying down on the pyre, and he was being burned. And he said to his captors, his torturers, he said, "Turn me over, I'm done." And I think this is a very a dangerous perspective, because unless we become what kind of beings might we be, light beings, total spirits, there is still this thing that we have that is called a body. And this is like a sacred vessel that has been given to us. And the abuse of that, externally from outside or from ourselves, is a major problem, I will not discard this, which is why this is a major problem. The cancers this is causing, the deaths, the mutilations, the mutations, we cannot handle man-made ionized radiation that comes from these nuclear reactors. We just can't. It's the most monumental event that has happened in human history, and it's being missed. So that's where I began to change my own life. That understanding made me change as a person. But I haven't talked like some people about it because it tends to go over as entertainment. So I have a different approach to this than many of my colleagues or like-minded souls and spirits out there that are attacking this head on, and I appreciate that. I'm not undermining that, or I'm not diminishing that whatsoever. But everybody has their own process, their own way of communicating what it is that is important, if they're of value and if they're real. If they're just entertainment, I just discard them. Well, as much as I enjoy a good story and watching a movie or something, right? So anyway, my thoughts today. You wanna see my Pinocchio again, as I started with my ear. Anyway, all the best as always to people that listen to me and that show up on my channel.